Throughout his entire life, he never lost a single battle. Even after 200 to 300 years, his grand legacy and influence remained unshaken. He was once the most formidable king in history, conquering a massive empire that stretched from Greece in Europe all the way to India in South Asia, all within a mere 10 years. Yes, I am talking about the one and only Alexander the Great. In this video, we will explore who he really was, how he built such a massive empire in such a short period, and delve into the fascinating stories of his life. The dual nature of a great ruler. Before we begin, there is one thing to keep in mind. Every person has both good and bad sides. Even a figure as magnificent as Alexander possessed dark sides that people often overlook or forget. In fact, if we were to discuss all of his virtues and vices together, it would take us all night. Therefore, this video will primarily focus on Alexander's grand history and his brilliant strategies. Becoming the Great. Before diving into Alexander's story, let's look at the title The Great. Many people mistake this for his actual name, but it is a title bestowed upon him by historians centuries after his death, recognizing his unbelievable military achievements and his success in spreading culture. Yet, even during his lifetime, people viewed him as more than a mere human. They saw him as a god. Alexander was born on a summer night in July 356 BC, in Pella, the capital of Macedonia. On that very night, the Temple of Artemis in Asia Minor, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was destroyed by fire. Historians later claimed this was an omen, signifying the birth of a grand figure who would destroy Asia and rebuild it anew. His mother, Olympias, instilled in him from a young age the belief that he was the son of Zeus, the king of the gods. Consequently, the mindset that he was grander than ordinary mortals flowed through his veins since childhood. From his youth, Alexander was unlike ordinary children. He possessed an intense curiosity and a strong-willed, stubborn character. It is said he even had striking eyes, one blue and one brown. Because of his unique physical and mental traits, everyone believed that he would one day rule the world. The most famous event demonstrating young Alexander's sharp insight was his encounter with the horse, Bucephalus. This horse was so wild and fierce that no one, including King Philip himself, could ride him. However, the 12-year-old Alexander noticed that the horse was simply terrified of its own shadow. He turned the horse to face the sun so it could no longer see its shadow, and the beast instantly calmed down. This perfectly illustrated Alexander's unique trait. Instead of relying blindly on brute force, he carefully observed situations to find strategic solutions. Witnessing this, King Philip famously told him, "My son, Macedonia is too small for you. You must seek a kingdom worthy of yourself." For his education, the world-renowned philosopher Aristotle was brought in. Aristotle taught him literature, art, and science, as well as politics and military strategy. Alexander grew up idolizing Achilles from Homer's Iliad. Throughout his life, he kept a copy of this book by his pillow, showcasing the sheer scale of his lifelong ambitions. At the age of 20, Alexander's father, King Philip, was assassinated. Alexander, who had always stood out from the crowd, became the king of Macedonia. Seeing an inexperienced youth on the throne, several city-states attempted to rebel. However, Alexander immediately demonstrated his military genius. Within weeks, he marched his troops hundreds of miles at lightning speed to crush the rebellions. His suppression of Thebes was particularly decisive and ruthless, serving as a brutal warning. The other city-states understood the message loud and clear and fell silent, never daring to rebel again. With Greece completely under his control, Alexander's power solidified, and he set his sights on his next target, the Persian Empire. At the time, Persia was one of the most powerful empires on earth. Alexander meticulously prepared his army for this monumental clash. He utilized the phalanx, a frontline infantry formation wielding long spears, sarissas, that were difficult for ordinary men to master. He paired this with his elite companion cavalry, which he personally led to pierce through the enemy's center. He was a genius at spotting enemy weaknesses within seconds, giving his army absolute confidence and unwavering morale. Alexander had a habit of conquering almost every city he encountered along his march. He treated these smaller towns as warm-up exercises. With an army of over 40,000 soldiers, he crossed the Hellespont in 334 BC and stepped onto Asian soil. His first major clash against the Persians was the Battle of the Granicus. The Persian commanders had taken high ground across the river. Sensing the danger of a river crossing, Alexander's veteran general, Parmenion, advised waiting until morning. But Alexander boldly replied, "Should we, who crossed the Hellespont, be afraid of this little stream?" and ordered an immediate attack. Leading his cavalry across the river, he charged the enemy's weakest point. During the brutal fighting, Alexander was nearly killed by a Persian commander's battle-axe, but his friend, Clytus the Black, severed the attacker's arm just in time. Ultimately, Alexander's tactics shattered the Persian lines, opening the gateway to Asia Minor. The second major clash was the Battle of Issus in 333 BC, where Alexander faced King Darius III of Persia. Although the Persian army vastly outnumbered the Macedonians, Alexander used the terrain to his advantage. By forcing the battle into a narrow plain confined between the mountains and the sea, the massive Persian numbers became useless. Alexander's strategy was straightforward. Strike directly at the center where King Darius stood. Leading his companion cavalry, he cut through the Persian ranks and reached the king's chariot. Terrified, King Darius fled the battlefield. When the Persian army saw their leader run, they fell into chaos and collapsed. This historic victory secured Darius's family as hostages, though the king himself escaped. The news echoed across the ancient world. The most powerful king on earth had fled in humiliation. Rather than chasing Darius immediately, Alexander turned west, a strategic move to secure supply lines and expand his territory before the final showdown. During this time, Alexander encountered the famous prophecy of the Gordian knot. In the Temple of Phrygia, modern-day Turkey, there was an incredibly complex knot. Prophecy dictated that whoever could untie it would rule the world. Many had tried and failed. Alexander examined the knot, drew his sword, and sliced right through it. This solidified the belief among his soldiers and enemies alike that he was destined to conquer the world. Next came the Siege of Tyre, an island fortress deemed completely impregnable. To prevent the Persian navy from acting, Alexander needed to control the coast. Old Tyre sat on the mainland, but New Tyre was located on an island about half a mile offshore. Alexander lacked a powerful navy at the time, making an island assault nearly impossible. Instead of a conventional naval attack, he chose a daring engineering feat, building a causeway from the mainland to the island using the stones, timber, and ruins of Old Tyre. The task was perilous. As the water grew deeper, Persian defenders rained arrows and fired ships down upon them. To counter this, Alexander built two massive wooden siege towers, 150 feet high, to return fire and protect his workers. Realizing a land bridge alone wasn't enough, he gathered ships from conquered Cypriot and Phoenician cities, building a fleet of 200 vessels to blockade the island. Using ship-mounted catapults, he breached the seawall, and his troops swarmed the island. Furious at how long the siege took, Alexander punished the city harshly. Fascinatingly, the sediment accumulated over centuries around his causeway turned the island of Tyre into a permanent peninsula that remains connected to the mainland today. From Tyre, Alexander marched into Egypt. The Egyptians welcomed him warmly as a liberator from Persian oppression. There, he was crowned pharaoh and revered as a living god. He founded the city of Alexandria, which would become the ancient world's greatest center of learning and culture. He also journeyed to the Oracle of Ammon at the Siwa Oasis, where the oracle confirmed him as the son of God, further boosting his divine authority over his men. Leaving Egypt, Alexander marched back into the heart of Persia for the final showdown. King Darius III, determined to reclaim his honor, gathered every available force and awaited Alexander on the wide plains of Gaugamela. Darius had leveled the ground perfectly to maximize his scythe chariots and war elephants. Alexander's generals advised a night attack, but Alexander famously responded, "I will not steal my victory," choosing a daytime battle instead. To counter the massive Persian numbers, Alexander deployed his troops in a staggered wedge formation. As the battle raged, he spotted a brief gap in the Persian line. He immediately led a cavalry charge directly into the opening toward Darius. Once again, faced with a direct, terrifying assault, Darius fled, causing his massive army to lose morale and shatter. This decisive victory permanently brought the Persian Empire under Alexander's rule and cemented his title as the Great. Within 10 years of taking the throne, he had conquered more than half of the known world. Alexander knew not just how to win wars, but how to command the minds of men. If you are interested in building influence and understanding the dynamics of power, you should check out the book The 48 Laws of Power. Even as master of the world, Alexander's ambitions did not stop. He wished to reach the Eastern Ocean, which ancients believed was the edge of the earth. In 326 BC, he crossed the Hindu Kush Mountains and entered India. There, he faced his toughest challenge yet, King Porus and his formidable army of war elephants at the Battle of the Hydaspes. Porus waded across the swollen, monsoon-fed river with over 200 war elephants. Alexander's cavalry horses panicked at the sight and smell of the elephants, making a direct crossing impossible. Demonstrating his genius once again, Alexander secretly moved a portion of his troops upriver under the cover of a violent night storm, crossing undetected to flank the enemy. During the fierce battle, Alexander's troops used specialized long pikes to target the elephants' trunks and eyes. Blinded by pain, the elephants went berserk, trampling their own infantry. Alexander emerged victorious. Respecting King Porus's immense bravery, Alexander did not treat him as a captive but as a friend, restoring his lands and expanding his territory. This grand gesture reflected the magnanimity of a true conqueror. The mutiny and the journey home. Despite the victories, Alexander's soldiers were exhausted. They had been away from home for over 8 years, enduring relentless monsoons and hearing terrifying rumors of even massive empires further east. At the Hyphasis River, his men staged a peaceful mutiny, refusing to go any further. For 3 days, Alexander confined himself to his tent, filled with frustration. He desperately wanted to reach the edge of the world, but he realized he could do nothing without the soldiers who won his victories. For the first time in his life, he conceded and turned back toward Macedonia. The journey home proved deadlier than war. Alexander split his army, personally leading a faction through the brutal Gedrosian desert. Thousands succumbed to heat, thirst, and starvation. During this trek, a soldier found a small amount of water and brought it to Alexander in a helmet. Seeing that his men were all burning with thirst, Alexander poured the water onto the sand, declaring he would not drink while his men suffered. This act profoundly reignited his soldiers' morale. Though a king, he shared their suffering equally. Upon returning to Babylon, Alexander began planning the governance of his new empire. However, his health was failing. In June 323 BC, he fell victim to a severe, sudden fever. As he lay dying, his generals asked whom he would leave his empire to. He reportedly replied, "To the strongest." At just 32 years old, Alexander the Great closed his eyes forever. Whether he was poisoned, succumbed to malaria, or died from old wounds remains one of history's unsolved mysteries. Following his death, his massive empire fractured into warring factions led by his generals. However, his cultural impact endured. By founding cities everywhere he went, he fused Greek and Asian cultures, initiating the Hellenistic Age, which heavily influenced the Roman Empire and the modern world. His military strategies are still taught in military academies today. Alexander pushed the boundaries of human capability, and though his life was brief, his name remains immortalized across history as the Great.